Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the GCSE Further Maths topic of integration, and we're going to look at how to answer integration questions that involve some rearranging before you integrate. So in this video, we're going to look at a couple of examples that lead on from the second video, the previous video, which was integration involving fractions, and then we're going to build up to answering questions like this one here, where we've got the x's on the denominator, and we need to be able to integrate these. Okay, now before we get on to the questions that involve x's on the denominator, I wanted to just do two examples based on something that I mentioned in the previous video. So we're going to integrate x cubed over 4 with respect to x. So if we wanted to integrate something like this, I would find it much easier if we had this 4 in front. So rather than it being x cubed over 4, we say it's a quarter of x cubed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to integrate a quarter x cubed with respect to x, because dividing x cubed by 4 is the same as multiplying it by a quarter. So if you've got the x cubed on the numerator, you can just put it beside the fraction, and then we just put a 1 on the numerator there. So we're going to integrate a quarter x cubed with respect to x. So let's integrate this. So to integrate it, we'll increase the power of x by 1. So it's now going to be x to the power of 4. And then we're going to divide by the new power. So we're going to take the quarter and we're going to divide it by 4. Now remember, it's a calculator question, so you can just do a quarter divided by 4 in your calculator, and that's equal to 1/16. Alternatively, if you want to divide a quarter by 4, you can just multiply the denominator by 4, and that's equal to 16. So it'll be 1/16. And then obviously we need to put our plus c. So if we're asked to integrate x cubed over 4 with respect to x, the answer would be 1/16 x to the power of 4 plus c. And that's it. Okay, now let's have a look at our next one. We've been asked to integrate 3x to the power of 8 over 7 with respect to x. So if I wanted to integrate this, well, if we have a look at it, we've got 3x to the power of 8 over 7. Now that would be the same as 3 over 7 times x to the power of 8 over 1, because here it's obviously, if you multiply the numerators together, you would get 3x to the power of 8, and then in the denominator you get 7. But I probably wouldn't write it like this. I would actually write it as 3/7 and then x to the power of 8. So if you have something like this, you can just put the fraction in front of the x to the power of 8 as long as the x is on the numerator. So that would be the integral of 3/7 x to the power of 8. And now we just need to integrate this. So to integrate this, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the power of x by 1. So that would be x to the power of 9. And then we're going to divide by the new power. So we're going to take the 3/7 and divide it by 9. And you can just do 3/7 divided by 9 in your calculator, and you get that's equal to 1/21, or 1/21. So we get that's equal to 1/21 x to the power of 9 plus c. And that's it. And if you wanted to, you could write it as x to the power of 9/21 plus c, but I'd probably just leave it like that. And that's it. And I just wanted to go through those because I mentioned them briefly in our last video. Okay, now let's have a look at the next example. So this time we've been asked to find the integral of 6 over x cubed with respect to x. So we need to integrate this with respect to x. Okay, now here, this time you'll notice that the x is on the denominator. So when you've got the x on the denominator, you really want to get off the denominator. Now, what I want to do is actually want to just go back over here, and I just want to consider some negative indices. So thinking back to your GCSE Maths, if you had something like 5 to the power of -2, you may remember if you've got something like that, 5 to the power of -2, that's equal to 1 over 5 squared. You just do 1 over the positive power. So that means that if we had something such as 1 over 5 squared, we could write it as 5 to the power of -2. You could actually bring the 5 up and write it as 5 to the power of -2. You could actually get rid of that fraction by bringing the 5 up and writing it as 5 to the power of -2. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So if we had something like this, where it's 6 over x cubed, you just bring the x cubed up and you say it's equal to 6 times x to the power of -3. So you can get rid of that x on the denominator by just bringing it up and then giving it a negative power rather than a positive power. So that's fantastic, because now instead of integrating 6 over x cubed, we can actually write it as the integral of 6x to the -3 dx. We're just writing this in a different form. We're bringing the x cubed up and calling it x to the power of -3. So we've got, find the integral of 6x to the -3 with respect to x. Okay, so now let's integrate this. So to integrate this, we just need to increase the power of x by 1 and then divide by the new power. So if we increase the power of x by 1, at the minute the power is -3. If you increase it by 1, it's going to go up 1. So instead of being -3, it's then going to be -2. So it's going to be -2. Then we're going to divide by the new powers. So the number in front of the x to the power of -3 was a 6. So the coefficient was a 6. We're now going to divide that by -2. And 6 divided by -2 would be -3. So we're going to get -3 x to the power of -2. And then obviously we need to remember our plus c, that constant of integration. And that's it. So we have integrated 6 over x cubed, and we've got an answer of -3 x to the power of -2 plus c. Now, just to mention here that actually if you wanted to, you could write this answer in a slightly different form. Rather than writing it as negative 3x to the power of negative 2, you can write it back in this form here. So we could write our negative 3, I'm just going to put a negative there, and then keep the 3 on the numerator. And then if we wanted to, we could bring this x to the power of negative 2 down. So we could bring it down as an x squared. So thinking back to this, if you got x to the power of negative 3, you can write it on the denominator and get rid of the negative power. So if you wanted to, you could put this x to the power of negative 2 back on the denominator. So you'd have negative 3 over x squared and then plus c. But if you're asked to integrate it, you could just leave your answer like that. You could actually just stop there. And if you're asked to integrate 6 over x cubed with respect to x, the answer would be negative 3 x to the power of negative 2 plus c. But perhaps you might want to rearrange it to this format if you want to substitute in values. So if I was substituting in values, I might find this version a little bit easier. And that's it. So in this case, we had the x cubed on the denominator. You can just bring it up and give it a negative power and then integrate it. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, this time we've been asked to find the integral of 7 over x squared with respect to x. So again, what we want to do is we want to rearrange this. So we don't want to have the x on the denominator. So let's bring it up. So we'll have 7. We'll bring that up and we'll give it a negative power. So it'll now be x to the power of negative 2. Because remember, if you have 1 over x squared, that's equal to x to the power of negative 2. Because if you had x to the power of negative 2, it's the same as 1 over x squared. So you can just write it like that, and then obviously with your dx. So we've just brought the x squared up and given it a negative power. Now we just need to integrate this. So we're going to increase the power of x by 1. So instead of being negative 2, it's now going to be negative 1, going back up 1. And then we're going to divide by the new power. So we're going to take the 7 and divide it by negative 1. And 7 divided by negative 1 will be negative 7. And then we need our plus c, our constant of integration. And that's it. So our answer would be negative 7 x to the power of negative 1 plus c. If we wanted to, we could write it in a similar format that we were given in the question. So we could put the x on the denominator again. So I'd write negative, then put 7 on the numerator, and then our fraction line. And it was x to the power of negative 1, so you're going to put that on the denominator, but give it a positive power. But instead of writing to the power of 1, I'm just going to leave it like that, and then plus c. So the answer would be negative 7 over x plus c. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So this time we've been asked to find the integral of 2 over x to the power of 9 with respect to x. So again, we want to get rid of this x on the denominator, so let's bring it up and give it a negative power. So we're going to integrate 2x to the power of negative 9, just bringing it up and giving it a negative power with respect to x. Okay, now we're going to increase the power of x by 1, so that'll be x to the power of negative 8, because you're going back up 1. And then you're going to divide by the new power, so we're going to take the 2 and divide it by negative 8. And 2 divided by negative 8 will be negative a quarter, so negative a quarter, x to the power of negative 8. And then remember the plus c. And that's it. And that you could leave your answer like that if you wanted to, but if you wanted to write it in the same format that you had in the question, you could put the x back on the denominator. So the answer here would be negative, and then we're going to put this on the denominator but make it a positive power, so 1 over 4x to the power of 8, and then plus c. But either one of those would be fine, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, let's look at our next one. So our next one, we've been asked to integrate 4 over 5x cubed with respect to x. So here we want to get rid of this x on the denominator, so we're going to bring it up and give it a negative power. So we're going to have the integral, and here we're going to have this fraction, so we're going to have the fraction 4/5, and we're bringing this up and we're going to give it a negative power, so I'm just going to put it there with the negative power with respect to x. So here we've got integrate 4/5 x to the power of negative 3 with respect to x. So we've just brought it up and given it a negative power. And that's it. Okay, now I've not put it on the numerator, I've just put it beside it. So here what we're going to do now is we're going to integrate this. So let's increase the power of x by 1. So that'll be x to the power of negative 2. Because if you're at negative 3 and you got 1, you get to negative 2. And then we're going to divide by the new power. So we're going to take the 4/5 and divide it by negative 2. And 4/5 divided by 2 is 2/5. So 4/5 divided by negative 2 would be negative 2/5. So it's negative 2/5 x to the power of negative 2 plus c. And you could leave it like that if you wanted to. I'm just going to put it in the same format we were given in the question. So I'm going to put this back on the denominator and make the power positive. So it's going to be negative 2 over 5x squared. Just putting it back on the denominator and then plus c. Now this would have been fine, but I've just written in that format as well, just in case you did rearrange it back into that format. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, our next one, we've been asked to integrate 1 over x to the power of 8 with respect to x. Okay, so here again, we want to get rid of this x on the denominator, so we've got integrate, and instead of 1 over x to the power of 8, we're just going to bring it up and give it a negative power, so it's going to be x to the power of negative 8. Now, I've not written the 1 there because obviously we know that if we've got x to the power of negative 8, it's the same as 1 over x to the power of 8, and if you did bring it up and put it beside the 1, well, you've got 1 times this, so there's no point in really having the 1 there, and then dx. Okay, now let's integrate it, so then increase the power of x by 1, so that'll be, if you're at negative 8 and then you got 1, you get to negative 7, so it'll be x to the power of negative 7. And then we're going to divide by the new power. There was a 1 there. We divided it by a negative 7, so it's going to be negative 1/7, and then plus c. And that's it. And I probably would leave my answer like that, but if you did want to write it in a similar format that you were given in the question, you then just put that in the denominator, so it'll be negative 1 over 7 x to the power of 7 plus c. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next 3 questions are more like exam style questions where you're going to have several terms that you need to integrate. So this time we've been asked to integrate 8x plus 5 over x squared with respect to x. So we're going to integrate each term separately, and obviously remember the plus c on the end. Okay, now before we integrate, I'm just going to rearrange this. So we're going to have integrate 8x, and then here we've got plus, and then here we've got 5 over x squared. I'm going to bring the x squared up and give it a negative power, so it'll be 5 x to the power of negative 2. Just bring in the x squared up and give it a negative power. And then we're going to integrate it with respect to x. Okay, so now let's integrate it. So we're going to integrate each of the terms separately. So let's integrate 8x. So we're going to increase the power of x by 1. So it was 1. You're increasing it by 1, so it's going to be x squared. And then you're going to divide by the new power. 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. So integrating 8x gives us 4x squared. Then we're going to integrate this. So we're going to increase the power of x by 1. So it's going to be x to the power of negative 1 because it was a negative 2. And if you got 1, you get to negative 1. And then we're going to divide by the new power. 5 divided by negative 1 will be negative 5. So negative 5 x to the power of negative 1. And then remember the plus c. And that's it. And you could leave it like that if you wanted to, or you could put this x back on the denominator, so it would be 4x squared minus 5 over x, just bringing that down, giving it a positive power. I'm not going to write the 1 though, so I'm just writing it as 5 over x, and then plus c. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, here's another exam style question. We've been asked to integrate x to the power 4 minus 2 over x cubed with respect to x. So again, before we integrate this, we need to rearrange this term here. So I'm going to have the integral of x to the power 4 minus, and we're going to bring this up and give it a negative power, so 2x to the power of negative 3. And then we're going to integrate that with respect to x. Okay, so now let's integrate it. So let's integrate each term separately. So the first term, we're going to increase the power of x by 1, so it'll be x to the power of 5. We're then going to divide by the new power. There was a 1 there. We're going to divide it by 5. 1 divided by 5 is equal to a fifth, so it'll be a fifth. So if you integrate x to the power of 4, you get 1/5 x to the power of 5. Now we're going to integrate this, so we're going to increase the power of x by 1, so that'll be x to the power of negative 2, because if it was negative 3 and you go up 1, you get to negative 2. Now we're going to divide by the new power. So we had negative 2. We're going to divide that by negative 2, and negative 2 divided by negative 2 will be 1. So we're going to write plus 1, or plus, because I'm not going to write the 1, I'm not going to write plus 1, I'm just going to write plus. So it's important there to realise that this sign will change from being a negative to positive, because we're doing negative 2 divided by the new power, which is negative 2, which is then 1, because a negative divided by negative is a positive. Okay? And then we need to put the plus c on the end. And that's it. So you could leave your answer like that if you wanted to. If you wanted to write it in a similar format that you were given in the question, you could write 1 over 5 x to the power of 5 plus. And then instead of writing this, we could write 1 over x squared, because that would be the same as x to the power of negative 2 plus c. And that's it. So you could write it in either of those formats and that'd be totally fine. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so our next exam style question. So this time we've got 3 things we need to integrate. We need to do each one separately. But before we do that, we need to look at this middle term here. So we're going to integrate. And notice here, I'm not putting equals. I'm still keeping the integration sign. And that's important. Whenever you're rearranging it, don't try and integrate bits of it and then rearrange other bits. It's better to rearrange it all. And then whenever you're ready, then to integrate. So let's just rearrange this. So we're going to have 12x to the power of 3. This term here will be plus, and we're going to bring this up and give it a negative power. So it'll be x to the power of negative 3. We're not writing the 1 there because, you know, there's no need. And obviously, remember, if you've got x to the power of negative 3, that's the same as 1 over x cubed. And then we've got our plus 5. and we're going to integrate that with respect to x. So we're going to increase the power of x by 1 and divide by the new power. So let's do that. So we're now integrating, so I'm now putting the equal sign and getting rid of that integration symbol. So we're going to increase the power of x by 1, so it's x cubed, so that'll then be x to the power of 4, and then we're going to divide by the new power. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that's the first term integrated. Now the next term, we're going to increase the power of x by 1. It was negative 3. It's now going to be, if you got 1, negative 2. And then we're going to divide by the new power. We've got a 1 here. We're dividing it by negative 2. And 1 divided by negative 2 will be negative a half. So we're going to write negative a half. So we've integrated the first term and we've integrated the second term. We've then got a 5, so integrating 5 would just be 5x. If you're integrating just a number like 5 or 7, you just put an x beside it, so that'll be 5x, and then plus c. And that's it. And that could be your answer. You could leave it like that if you wanted to. Alternatively, we could write this in a similar format. So you could write 3x to the power of 4. You could put this bit on the denominator, so it'd be minus 1 over 2x squared, just bringing that back down to be with the denominator, plus 5x plus c. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our last question. So our last question, we've been asked to integrate 5 over 8x squared minus 4 over 5x cubed minus 1 with respect to x. Okay, so let's deal with each term separately, but before we do that, we need to rearrange it because we've got x's on the denominators. So let's do that. So let's put our integration symbol, and let's rearrange it. So here we've got 5 over 8x squared. I'm going to bring the x squared up, so I'm going to leave that as 5/8. So I'm going to keep that fraction as it is, and then I'm going to write beside it x, and then I'm going to write negative 2. Just bringing that up and putting it beside it and writing it as x to the power of negative 2. Then I'm going to put the minus sign. And then here we've got 4 over 5x cubed. Again, I'm going to write that fraction, the 4/5 in front, and then I'm going to bring that up and give it a negative power, so it'll be x to the power of negative 3. And then we've got minus 1, and then we're integrating that with respect to x. Okay, so that's fantastic. We've now rearranged it. Now we need to integrate it. So we need to increase the powers by 1 and divide by the new powers. So let's do each term separately. So the first term, we had 5/8 x to the power of negative 2. We're going to increase the power by 1, so it'll be x to the power of negative 1. And then we're going to divide by the new power. 5/8 divided by negative 1 will be minus 5/8. So that's the first term integrated. The next term. Now notice here I'm not putting a minus sign here because here some of these signs are going to change, perhaps from being minuses to pluses and things like that. So I'm going to focus on the x. I'm going to increase the power of x by 1. So it was negative 3, so then it'll be negative 2. Now we're going to take the minus 4/5 and we're going to divide it by negative 2. So negative 4/5 divided by negative 2. Well, negative divided by negative will be a positive, so plus. And 4/5 divided by 2 would be 2/5, so 2/5. And then we've got minus 1, and when we integrate minus 1, we're going to get minus 1x or minus x, or minus x, and then obviously plus c. And that's it. And we could leave our answer like that if we wanted to. But here I'm just going to write it in a similar format to the question, that if you chose to do that, just so you know what it would be. So here we've got minus 5/8, so minus, and then 5 over 8, and then we're putting the x on the denominator, and we're changing the power from being negative to positive, so it'd just be x like that, so it's minus 5 over 8x. Plus, and then we've got our 2, and the x to the power of negative 2, we're going to make it x squared on the denominator, so 5x squared, and then minus x, and then plus c. And that's it, we've integrated it. And that's it. So in this GCSE Further Maths video, we have looked at how to answer integration questions where we need to do a bit of rearranging before we integrate. And so you can answer exam questions like this one here, where we had to rearrange it before we integrated it. And I really hope you found this video useful, and if you have found it useful, please like it and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, cheers, bye.